Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. And today, something special. We've brought in the bulldozer because we're fully under construction. We're going to cut the baseboard, drop it down, and get that curved viaduct installed. So I hope you enjoy. Let's see what we come up with. Proof paper, baking paper. Baking paper is what we call it here in Australia. One of the most invaluable things I think you can possibly have. Let's just take a moment here and see how I've used it in this particular application. Since I need to lift this corner board out because we're going to cut a section for the curved viaduct in there, when I was laying the cork, it's in these 1 meter lengths that I've cut down as explained in an earlier video. And I wanted to keep the flow going down in one hit, so that's exactly what we did. But knowing the boards are going to have to split, I just simply, as I was gluing down the cork, slipped down a little bit of this paper into the gap. And wouldn't you know it, now when it's time to lift the board out, so to speak, look at that. They come out perfectly. You can't argue with those results. Magnificent. And that's why I always keep some handy. Well, the afternoon sun is setting. So before it does, we've got our board out. Here's the section we're going to be cutting out for our curved viaduct. A bit of furniture restoration because clearly I have too much time on my hands. Got a tripod ready. Let's get docked in, fast forward the section and get this little section cut. So we've just removed our soda cans from this viaduct, which we laid some cork down and weighted down. Again, we come back to our baking paper. Now you can see as I had some weight that was sitting on it to keep the cork down, I used these just set of metal brackets here, which kept it down nicely. And you can see where there was a bit of cork being joined up. I've got this overlap of glue that's decided to attach to the paper. Or has it? Look at that. Magical. So you can keep the weight down, nothing stays there. Now I know that the joins on this are a little bit on the average side there, but by the time the track's swept around and we've put the ballast down, I'm not losing too much sleep. Now we'll get dropping down this section and getting the heights matching up perfectly from where the cork is here across here and have it at the right level. Okay, so now we're starting to get a bit of an idea of what I was up to here with cutting it and dropping it down. So our next section is we're going to link these pieces together. And what I'm probably going to do down across the bottom is I'm probably going to take silicone or some form of a Sikaflex and sort of build up a little bit of a slope, but that also creates a little bit of a seal around it so that we're not going to completely fill this with an epoxy resin. We're going to just sort of have some pools and puddles around it as if it is low tide and there's just a little bit of water left in there. Most surprising about the way I've dropped this down is, let's not get too accurate with this particular spirit level. I wouldn't be building a house with it. We've got the bubble in the middle there. Now, I am surprised because looking at it from this angle, I don't know if you can see it like me. It looks though, and it's probably just the look because of the back, because I can actually see the bracket. It looks like it's actually sloping back this way. But even if I take the level and I do slap it on this kind of an angle, I know there's a bit of movement because we're going to have to lift and make it, we're still not too bad. So again, I'm going to fine tune that by bringing legs up accordingly onto here so I get these exact heights. But at the moment, we are, and of course we'd need a sheet of cork over here, wouldn't we? We're not. You can see I've got to come up just a fraction. Not doing too bad though. Starting to look pretty good from this end. You'll recall in a previous video I talked about do's and don'ts in the video. And here's where my own brilliance has come unstuck. So you can see I used this box of soda cans here, and with a little piece to fill me in to make sure I got the right gap. And I did a quick pre-drill, and I've popped a few brackets in there, and I've still got some others that we're going to level off and fix off accordingly. but because it's hanging down that little bit and I take my timber out, I can't get the soda box out anymore. It's not the end of the world. We're going to bust the box open and take all the cans out one by one, but just another moment of brilliance that really makes you appreciate that I'm on the right track. And we're back. We've just had a coat of paint. Let's just take a moment here to appreciate. I've gone for this as a rust guard, red oxide. Now, this is a situation with paint where what you may not know for us here in Australia is they don't ship aerosol cans. So I can't just go to my model shop again, put an order online because my nearest one is several hours away and say I need Humbrol or I need Tamiya of a spray one or this or that in the colors I'd ideally like. And I've been getting advice on forums because the situation is they won't send it. So in this situation, I went down to the hardware store. I wasn't looking for the most cheapest or expensive paint. I was looking just purely based on color, and this is the one I've gone for. And in this picture here, which is what I'm sort of trying to go with, which was of course the legendary Thomas the Tank Engine episode where they needed some water, they pulled it out of this some seawater, I believe, or at least that's what this vegetation looks like. There was some fish in his water tank, so they all ended up having fish and chips. What a delicious ending to the story. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave it like that. Now when it comes to painting with those little flecks of white, and we'll need the little scuffs of black and a bit of mildew and stuff like that, we'll do that later when we're landscaping. Again, a lot of people say it's much easier to lift this viaduct out and paint it when you can. I only need to do one side. It's only going to be a few key bits, and I think we're going to be okay. So we won't lose any sleep, but we've got a base coat down, and I think it really doesn't look too bad. Let's carry on now. So we're going to slip our viaduct out of the way. Right, now I've decided to go with a white in this particular application because that way, obviously, the salt and all the rest of it, when it comes to bushes and that, with the white, we're going to keep things neutral. We can easily paint over it and carry on as needed. We've just laid that little bit of gap filler or silicone or what have you in place. Remember, it's not that we're trying to make this watertight. Because where we're probably going to put these few pools of epoxy to create a bit of water coming through here and there, I probably might even just take a clear silicone or something like that and just put a fine bead of where it is, where I pour it in. I'm not too sure because again we're emulating a low tide, so it's a point where we're going to have some of those sort of, well, not mangroves, but the sort of the salt hearty type of little shrubs that grow in this sort of area around it, sort of framing off where some of that water's going to be. So the next part, I thought what might be a good idea, we're laying down a brown or something like that, but I actually thought we might just paint this section in a white. Again, we're going to mimic this sort of salty sort of thing, but I think it gives us a really nice clean canvas to build whatever we want to do in this situation. Now, I'm just going to quickly take a moment here. I'd usually just take some form of typical white paint that's around, or even a white spray paint or something like that, and put it on. And I was umming and ahhing about it, and I know that obviously I did make these marks here with the marker here, and usually when you paint, sometimes it can come through. I could have sanded it back, etc, etc, etc. Long story short, my wife's been doing a bit of furniture restoration, and I noticed her doing some work with a bit of plywood the other day, where she just went over with a brush using this. This is an Australian-made product, Pureco, and it's designed for furniture and decor. So it's a low sheen, self-sealing finish. What I was amazed about is she just put one application on and it was perfect. I'm not expecting it to make all of this disappear, but what I liked about it is usually when you're using your pines and timbers, it likes to sort of drink paint in. So you'll often undercoat and then put two top coats or what have you on it. So when I saw and she was working on the end of the grain, which is often sometimes a more trickier part to be painting because it needs multiple coats, especially if you're using something like a spray paint or something like that. But let's put this on for no other reason. I've just taped it off. I don't know what's going to happen in this back bit exactly. You sort of come down, you do just see the end of it from looking at it at that angle. But let's just put this paint down to give us that nice neutral canvas. Well, here we are, one coat of a white paint. As you can see, it did quite a good job. I can still see a bit of pen mark here and there, but for the most part, it's white. And the interesting thing about using that silicone is it does sort of give that 3D modeled creation of what we need. We're not really going to see this back scene, so I'm not too concerned apart from here, and who knows what we're going to do there. So the next thing is, I did manage to knock up a couple of little pieces now that we can slide in, and I've just made one here that we're going to pop in that will connect up to the viaduct. And you'll notice here there's an empty cavity where I could put dropper wires in for feeders or something like that, and I've done that over here. I'm not sure if the camera will see, but I've also plunged holes ready to go for that because we are due for some down there. So we will do that, and it'll ensure smooth operation over the viaduct. Okay, so here is where we're at the moment. We've popped the viaduct in and we've given it that slap of paint, and we've got some white down here. Now the next challenge is, and I've brought the camera down a little bit, you can see that we've got a little bit of a height discrepancy here. Now what I've been doing along the build, I've been using these. Now these are 2mm thick, and I have some that are 1mm thick, and I use them for various applications during the build. And one great thing is when you've got a few and you've laid some track and need a bit of weight, you just pocket down onto the track, and it's quite good. Now the problem is though, if we grab a ruler and we have a look at what we're dealing with now, we've got a discrepancy, as you can see, where this, which isn't sitting quite down, there we go, we've got a discrepancy that's just under a centimetre. In fact, it's 8mm to tell you the truth, by the time this is obviously going to have some cork on either side. So what we do to get the accurate measurement, we start building our little system here. That's 2, 4, 6, which brings us to the plywood, and this will cover the cork, and we've got this beautiful smooth level to go on. So that's where we're going to need to lift it. Now I was going to use these metal situations, and I need the long ones in here, and I could use these here, 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 and the long ones again over here. But this starts to get quite weighty. In fact, we're probably getting close to adding about 1 kilo or more to that board just to get it lifted up. So then I noodled around, and then I discovered some trimming timber, which was exactly 8mm tall. So if we take a short little piece here and pop it in, that's beautiful. So what I did was I just knocked 3 up for here and a couple of long ones, which, as you can see, they're going to sit underneath basically here and lift it up. So let's attach them now, shall we? Well, it's now time to conclude, because we've finished this little section, and I think you'll agree it's come up quite well. So you can see we've got a cork nicely matching up on either side here, but I wanted to just take a moment to point a couple of things out. And the first of all, there is no way I can think of that the viaduct's ever going to experience this type of weight applied. A locomotive, 2 passing over it at any one time, is certainly not the equivalent of one of these batteries, which has the weight. And, you know, we're basically talking about 400 grams. So basically that's just under 1 kilo there. That's just under 1 kilo. More soda cans. Each one of these batteries is coming in at about 500 grams. So that's easily another kilo there. I mean, we've got some substantial weight. But let us just remove these items out of the way so we can appreciate the final product, if you like. Now, some may well criticise the fact that there should have been additional painting and doing this while you can still get at it. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit tricky as we come down, but the good thing is at least the track geometry can keep going. We're going to do our best to try and get that track all laid down before the end of the year, down now to just under 6 months now. But I still am optimistic, as these were the 2 trickiest bits we've accomplished. The other thing about it as well is I'm quite happy the way this is actually shaped off, and I'll just share another picture here where you can see how the edging has shaped around nicely. By the time I've put the vegetation around it, that'll all come in nicely, a little bit of paint to make what we need to happen there. But I guess the important thing I just wanted to make mention of, and I was thinking about, to give it a little bit more interest here, I might sort of put I don't want to say derelict, but perhaps a somewhat disused type of old boat ramp that you'd see at low tide, with the little marker sticks coming out where, you know, a traditional boat and trailer package would come along. I was just going to have a wooden vessel just sort of leaning on its side in the low tide, and I don't want to get too busy here, but still the old style boat ramp, maybe even a little navigation beacon or something. Again, it might start getting a bit busy for a small area, but the whole idea is to create a little bit of interest here, and I think it's nice in what was just always going to be a corner, and the two tracks had to come along on a risen section. That's certainly how it's going to be at the other corner, but I think this has achieved something rather unique. Thank you so much for your patience in this one. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's an interesting way to obviously use the corner. The corner at the other end will most likely just be some timber and the track will wrap around, but I think we've created a little bit of interest on this one, and I look forward to developing this little corner. By the time we've got our vegetation in and we've got a bit of an epoxy and that running in, again, by elevating, putting those little feet under it, so we got the exact level here, and of course the weight will be spread out with the tracks as well, which makes it all the more. I think this is going to be quite an interesting little scene that we've created in what would be an otherwise empty corner. As you can see, we've got our other downline here, which will be running to and from, which is sort of the feature, but it'll give us a nice little backdrop to look upon in a corner, which can otherwise be a little bit wasted for many reasons because it's deep and hard to get into. See you in the next one. Stay safe. Toodles.